Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Hall, and I'm here to share with you some of the news that will help you fight fascism and the religious right. That's what we do here on the Disappointed Cat Morning Show. Let's talk about the first bit of news. There's a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to do this material justice, everyone. Let's do it. Marc Saulnier, 52, Fort Valley, Georgia, trucker, anti-vaxxer, is dead from COVID. He's a special case because he is one of the anti-science advocates, that's a pleasant way of saying it, who was going to run for public office in Georgia. And now he's no longer with us. And here's a pic. Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't think that was taken while he was going to his Mensa meeting, everyone. Links in the description below. So I'm just going to bounce down to, of course, he was a trucker, and Marc had his own long-haul rig and owned by Barlow Trucking Company in Fort Valley. He was going to run for U.S. representative in the 2nd District in Georgia in the next election. Marc was to run in the Republican primary in March against Chris West. Republicans are hoping the new gerrymandered district lines will help turn the 2nd District red. He was an anti-vaxxer who didn't get vaccinated, and so he got COVID and it took his life and knocked him out of the primary. Let's take a look at how toxic Marc was, what kind of filth he was spreading on social media, what kind of disinformation he was spreading. These anti-vaxxers, anti-science types, they always think that they're such good. They're great writers. Alzheimer, Beijing, Biden, and Spread Eagle Harris. Do you ever notice that a lot of these anti-vaxxers, a lot of these Republicans, just cannot wait to say something misogynistic, to say something against women? Expect everyone to take the vaccine within the first 100 days. But how can we, the people, trust it when you have Democrats constantly saying and asking when they are going to put Republicans into re-education? Yeah, see, that's the thing. Do you remember? You'll hear every once in a while these anti-vaxxers talk about re-education camps. And if you remember the fight for Obamacare, the fight for basic health care in the United States of America years ago, that they were going to be talking about, what is it? Re-education camps, death panels. It's the same lie they recycle over and over again, everyone. Here's another slice of wisdom from Marc, all in caps, of course. And it's an interesting observation that this gentleman, he was ahead of his time, folks. He was calling for the trucker revolt long before the Canadians thought of it. All in caps, just to show you how passionate he is about the death cult he belongs to. Attention, people who like to eat. Attention, people who like to eat. I think that was in Shakespeare. And people who enjoy normal life. Wow, he's saying 50 to 60% of all truckers to go home and shut this country down. That sounds like economic terrorism. That sounds like economic terrorism when you're having a small group of people trying to produce political ends by shutting down the country. And now here's a picture of Marc, no longer, just at the last stages. I wonder if he regretted being an anti-vaxxer, or I wonder whether or not he was one of those anti-science, anti-vaxxers who just refused to admit that he had COVID up until the day he died. Because we know that there's been a gaggle of them. We've talked about them a bunch of times on this show. So that's Marc in the United States of America. Now we're going to shift to Canada. I know, it's Canada. We're going to talk about Canada right now and about how foreign money is influencing, funding the protests in Canada. This is from The Guardian. Foreign money funding extremism in Canada, says hacker. Exclusive leak shows more than half of donations to convoy protest through Give, Send, Go came from the U.S. I don't know if any of you have heard some conversations. You know, you look to Canadian news, and there'll be everyday Canadians walking down the street in Ontario going, I cannot believe that we've turned into the United States of America. And the reason why, unfortunately, Canada, that you now have this kind of schism in your society is partly because of money from the United States of America. We have exported our psychiatric problems onto you. A hacker who leaked the names and locations of more than 90,000 people who donated money to the Canadian trucker convoy protests has said it exposed how money from abroad has funded extremism in the country. In an exclusive interview, the hacker told The Guardian that Canada was not safe from foreign political manipulation. You see a huge amount of money that isn't even coming from Canada. That's plain as day, said the hacker, who belongs to the hacktivist group Anonymous. A professor, I'm not going to try to pronounce this professor's name because I would destroy it. A professor at Canada's Queen's University and an expert in extremism and social movements tweeted that of the 92,844 donations, 51,666, that's 56% for all of us, came from the U.S. 56% of the donations for this convoy, for the truckers, came from the United States of America. We are exporting our insanity to Canada. 29% came from Canada, and 1,831 came from the UK. US-based donations totaled $3.62 million, while Canadians donated $4.31 million, he added. The hacker said the sizable number of donations coming from Canada showed that some people in the country has fallen into step with what they call American-style extremism. The data shows that about a dozen donors use .gov email addresses in association with donations, indicating that some money came from government employees in the U.S. These included accounts from the U.S. Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, NASA, so disappointed, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and State Transit Corporation. The data also contained one Canadian government email address. When asked what the leak meant to the public, the hacker said, if you are doing some fascism and domestic extremism kind of movements, then you are not going to have a good time, because activists have been focusing more and more on countering domestic extremism because we are effing pissed, as am I. And I'm sure most of you here are pro-science, pro-vaccine, anti-idiot. How can we not be pissed off? Because, you know, Republicans, the oligarchs here, are engineering this kind of conflict so that they can get seats in the midterm elections. Creating chaos is part of the playbook. It isn't a glitch of the system. It is a feature of it, everyone. Checking out the chat. John Christian, my parents were incarcerated in a Soviet prison. I don't want to hear people compare the U.S. or Canada to communism. That's crazy talk. Well, it is. And that's the thing about these right-wing movements, is that their bread and butter are conspiracies, right? Whether you're talking about the Salem witch trials, whether or not you're talking about McCarthyism, QAnon, they are built on conspiracies. And these conspiracies are made to have people, the everyday people, do their bidding. Checking out the chat, everyone. If you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on Facebook, you're going to see that I interact with the chat here on YouTube. If you want to join the community, please come on over to YouTube. It's the Laughing in Disbelief channel. All right, just checking out how everyone's doing. Good morning, Tobin Templeman. I hope you're doing well this morning. All right. I think I caught up with everyone in the chat. And so you want to do more? Do you want to do more? We got 10 minutes. I can do another story before doing the halftime show, folks. Let's do this thing. So we started off with Canada. Well, we started off with truckers, right? The trucker who died here in the States. We talked about money flowing in from here in the States to Canada. And now I just wanted, before we get to the emergency powers Prime Minister Trudeau has called for Canada, I just want to show you the death rate, the COVID death rate in Canada. This was from yesterday. Simple Googling of this. Deaths from in Canada yesterday were 31. The 7-day average is 107. How many dead children? How many dead grandmothers and grandfathers? How many dead immunocompromised people is worth these truckers not getting vaccinated? Because each trucker who isn't getting vaccinated is a vector of disease to spread the disease, and they travel all across the country. That's the purpose of it, right? That's the purpose of being a trucker, is that you transport goods. They transport the virus too. So the question isn't about whether or not their freedoms are being taken away. It's about whether or not they have the freedom to kill people, whether or not they get to be complicit in murder. And that's what happens when you're not vaccinated and when you're not wearing a mask. All right. Canada trucker protests. What powers will the Emergencies Act give Trudeau? For all of us here in the States, a lot of us here in the States, we try to be, we don't even know how our own government works. We're not aware that the President of the United States can declare martial law, that we have something similar to the Emergencies Act here in the States. But let's look at what happens in Canada when this occurs. The Emergency Powers Act passed in 1988 bestows the government with added powers in times of national crisis. The situation must meet a high bar, specifically an urgent and critical situation that seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians. And the cabinet may only invoke the legislation if the emergency cannot be addressed by any existing federal law, if it exceeds the capacity for the provinces to handle it effectively. So right now, Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. He has 7 days before the legislature, before Parliament okays it. So he has 7 days to act. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's continue with the story. Next. Oh, here we go. What powers does the Emergencies Act grant? Under the Act, the government has a number of far-reaching powers at its disposal. The government can bar travel to or from specific areas. From Parliament Hill or major border crossings, for example. It could order the evacuation of people and personal property from certain areas. They could remove the truckers, for an example. They could remove their trucks. They could just tow them away. Possibly using this power to clear out congested areas of protesters. And it could direct individuals and companies to render essential services, perhaps ordering tow truck companies to lend their services and clear the roads of demonstrators and their vehicles. But while Mr. Trudeau's government may soon be granted an almost carte blanche to respond to the protests, there is no indication the Prime Minister will seek military intervention. The Emergencies Act outlines 4 different types of emergencies: public welfare emergencies, public order emergencies, international emergencies, and war emergencies. It will likely be under the public order category. Once again, he already invoked it. This is an article from the other day. Again, the criteria here is strict. Lawful protests do not qualify. Instead, the situation must be considered a threat to the security of Canada as defined by the Canadian Security Intelligence Act. There are 4 possible scenarios. And to tell you the truth, with all the money coming in from the United States, from a foreign power to cause unrest in Canada, this may well satisfy the foreign influence activities criteria for invoking the act. That alone. So you can see some of the other reasons: espionage or sabotage, threats for serious violence of political, religious, or ideological objectives, and unlawful acts intended to undermine or overthrow the constitutionally established government. Gosh, I don't know. What's the logical progression of right-wing fanaticism? We only have to look at the United States of America and see what happened on January 6th to see what the natural outgrowth of this kind of radicalism is, everyone. Going to check out the chat before doing the halftime tummy rub show. That's right, John Christian. So the Emergency Act was initiated in 1988. There was the War Measures Act, which was once invoked, I think, by Trudeau's father, to tell you the truth, due to terrorism in Quebec, if I do recall my Canadian history properly. All right. You want to do the halftime tummy rub show? Let's do the halftime tummy rub show. I'm running hot this morning, everyone. We're going to take a sit. We're going to relax a little bit. We're going to relax a little bit, take a look at a cat, and then dive back down to the story. So good. You'll notice there are no commercials here. The closest thing we have to a commercial is that, hey, here's a cat. How about you enjoy looking at a cat for a second? And while we talk about fascism and the information that you can use to help inform you in your fight against fascism, either here in the States or in Canada or anywhere else in the world, it's good. Just put a smile on our faces, right? Get some perspective on things. So yeah, there's no ads. If you could hit the like button, that'd be great. This channel is funded by YouTube members, patrons, people who throw a couple of shekels into my PayPal, Venmo accounts, link in the description below, but there's no ads. And if you can't do that, then how about just sharing the video? That would be fantastic, right? I think so. All right. Last story. We're burning through the news stories this morning, everyone. And this is like 90% of this show is about Canada today. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the act, the Emergency Act. Trudeau vows to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts. It starts to get real when they talk about freezing your bank account. In Ottawa, the nation's capital, between 400 and 500 trucks have been parked in the city center for 18 days. Protesters have paralyzed parts of the city, mainly on streets around Parliament. The city of Ottawa declared a state of emergency a week ago. Weekend protests have also taken place in cities in Canada, including Toronto and Winnipeg. On Monday, police in Alberta announced that 11 protesters at counts on the U.S.-Canadian border have been arrested and a cache of firearms were received. It seems like we're just not exporting money to fund fascism into Canada. It seems like we're sending guns up there too. Deputy Prime Minister Freeland said on Monday news conference that banks would be able to freeze personal accounts of anyone linked to the protests without any need for a court order. Vehicle insurance of anyone involved with the demonstrators can also be suspended, she added. She said they were broadening Canada's terrorist financing rules to cover cryptocurrencies and I'm speaking in tongues. Crowdfunding platforms as part of the effort to end the protests. Getting real? Getting serious about dealing with right-wing fanaticism in Canada, and good job, Canada. Congratulations on that. I'm going to check out the chat and see what's going on there. We're doing the after party after show at 9:30. It's basically an open room. If you want to join us, the link is in the description. It's going on the sister channel. It's over on the Naked Diner podcast channel. And the link to that channel, if you just want to watch, is down in the description below too, everyone. All this madness because some truckers don't want to get vaccinated. Well, do you remember the Tea Party here in the States? And then it turned out that they were it was supposedly a grassroots movement, and then we found out that it was actually funded by oligarchs. Yeah, it's like that, everyone. Sure, it's not a grassroots movement. What it is that it's a movement orchestrated by fanatical right-wingers to undermine democracy. All right. Maybe I'm going to throw down the last cat. Oh, hey, Simply Secular Dave, right here from the West Coast of Canada. Remember when Canada declared the Proud Boys a terrorist group and people in southern states laughed at us? Yeah. And exactly. Proud Boys, basically stormtroopers, not from Star Wars, everyone, But from, the 1930s, the 1920s in Germany, the stormtroopers, right? They were the paramilitary wing of the National Socialist German Party, Workers' Party. You know what I'm talking about there. And that's who the Proud Boys are. And Canada did the right thing by labeling them a terrorist organization. Wow, what a show. What a show this morning. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to drop a Last Cat video to put a smile on your face, right? And then a thank you video for patrons, YouTube members, and everyone who contributes. And once again, if you can't throw a couple of shekels in, maybe you can share the video on social media. Tell a friend about the show. Thanks, everyone. I hope to see you at 9:30. Take care.
Your behavior today has been a solid 4 out of 10. Yeah, just not good. I suggest you go take a nap, and then we can reevaluate. Okay?